Putting together a best of album after 23 years and 13 albums?
Hard because I don't know about best ofs. They're funny things. Like this is my second one I've ever had out.
Right.
I actually, my first one was on EMI as well.
Right.
First one I never liked because I never thought the little big band material should have been on the same. And I see why they were. I mean, Cadillac Baby had to sit beside Just Came Back, which to me is two separate worlds.
Right.
And I was never happy with that. And then there's a question of whether you do the best of the ones that sold or the ones that you really consider the best.
Right.
You know, and that's a huge difference. There's a huge disparity there, and there was some talk about doing another one where they're going to let me, because I love Speechless. You know, it's one of my favorite instrumentals one of my favorite songs I've ever written, but it didn't chart or anything like that. So best of what? You know, is it? So hopefully I'll have another kick at the can. They've told me they're going to do another one, and they've told me they're going to do another Little Big Band best of, out of Little Big Band 1, 2, and 3. And that I really would be excited, because I've always thought to package it in a real cool, you know, vintage-looking thing would be a real gas. You know?
You actually had a bit of a departure from EMI Canada for a while.
Well, I was signed to Virgin America,
yeah,
and EMI Canada really came up in spades when I went to do the first Little Big Band record. America kind of looked at me like, "Why would you want to do this?" And I said, "Because I think it's cool, and I think it's valid, and I don't have enough songs written for the next record." And they just didn't get it. And had they said yes, we would have beaten Brian Setzer to that punch by a year and a half. And they just didn't understand. And then Canada, thank God, Virgin Canada, which EMI, stepped up to the plate and did that record. And want to shut that door?
Just thinking that, yeah.
It's a little bit ambionic, but it's a little loud.
There we go.
So, you know, God bless EMI Canada for having the faith, and then no sooner had that happened, about 6 months later, they flew me down to LA and they said, "Oh my God, have you heard this Brian Setzer? Now we understand what you were doing." And I'm like, you know,
Americans.
Well, it's just like I missed the boat on that thing twice down there. You know, I finally got a release in America on Elektra, on my Little Big Band 2, but we were late again. Because they fiddled around, and then by the time they fiddled around, Setzer's record had come out again and beat me the second time. And my record, by the way, was out like a year. It was in the can, almost a year and a half in front of his. Yet by the time we got an American label to say yes, okay, it was because it was a huge fad already.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too late.
Oh yeah, it's a part of this. We're rolling with this now. We're on top
Oh
of
my
it.
God! So the first review that comes out of my record in the States says, "How do you convince people that you're not jumping on a bandwagon? Name your record Little Big Band 2, like to make it look like you've done it before." And like, did you even do your homework? Like, I did do it, you know. Anyway, it was so frustrating.
Now back to your current release. Take It From the Top. There are 2 new songs on there, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. One of them is an original. It's Gonna Be All Right.
Yeah.
Written by yourself.
Written by myself and two guys out of Nashville.
Yeah. And you decided to cover Buddy Miles' Then Changes. What inspired you to choose that song?
I went to Maui to go meet Mick Fleetwood because Mick Fleetwood had said he was interested in putting this band together, and he'd already talked to Johnny Lang because they had done some project together. So the idea was going to be Johnny Lang and me and Mick Fleetwood, and we were going to do a tour, like a kind of a Fleetwood Mac, not Fleetwood Mac, but like an early blues version of Mick Fleetwood's blues band. But it didn't. I went over there and went out to his place, and we had there was a big party going on. It was New Year's last year, and guys from Metallica, and Michael McDonald, and Michael McDonald from Doobie Brothers.
Oh.
And Roseanne Barr's old husband, what's his name?
Tom Arnold.
Tom Arnold.
Yeah.
He was there, and all these different people, and it was a big benefit. I had this thing, so I came down to play with Mick Fleetwood, and I did two or three songs with him, and then he let me play on my own. And Michael McDonald got up and did Them Changes, and tore the house down. You know, I can't say mine did maybe as well. You know, it's funny because sometimes you see somebody Like Michael McDonald, I've never been a big Doobie Brothers fan, but my God, he can sing. Like, I never really quite realized what a good R&B soul singer he is. He's really good. So that was the inspiration. I saw him do it at the club that night, and I thought, well, that's plus, Buddy Miles, I've always loved the it's got a great groove.
Yeah. You have some pretty strong influences in blues. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, your hero has been and always will be Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Well, yeah, I think I have. It's a funny thing with Stevie. I loved Stevie very much, and we were friends, and he took me on the road with him. I got to tour on his bus, and he gave me a lot of early support. I didn't listen to after he died. It took me a long time to start listening to him again, just because it would. I don't know. It was just kind of. It was such a bummer, like Albert Collins. I have a lot of heroes like that, like Albert Collins. I love Albert Collins, but Van Morrison's been my kind of biggest hero over the last few years.
Really?
Yeah, and he's not a blues guitar player, but I think I appreciate him because I think he's really brave. I think. He's bucked trends all his life. He's done some records that are, in the 80s that were, maybe not his best work. But then buried in the middle of a record would be Have I Told You Lately That I Love You, or some fantastic song. And I just think he's always followed his muse, and never done the same thing twice. And so I'm a big fan of Van Morrison. Yeah.
It's funny because you can argue till the cows come home, but it comes down to the fact that a lot of rock, a lot of current rock, or even 90s, 80s, 70s, they all have roots in blues.
Yeah, well, especially with English, Mick Fleetwood, Long John Baldry, Rod Stewart, the Stones. They worship Chicago blues more than most Americans did. They the first thing they did when they went to Chicago is went straight to Chess Records, and but blues, and blues, soul, gospel, all that, There's so much you can learn from that,
You're just wrapping. It looks like you're just wrapping up the end of your Canadian or your national acoustic tour.
Yeah, we've been doing it in little stages over the years, and it's a funny thing. I never really considered myself an acoustic musician, and I had to get kind of pushed out the door to do these kind of gigs because it's not. I've always been with a band. If you have a band, you don't have to talk to the audience. You can just kind of go, "Thank you, good night." That's about it, right? And I like that, But these have really forced me to be a little more talkative, forthcoming, and oh my God, it made me so nervous when I first started doing these things, and it still does a little bit. But I ended up really enjoying them, and there's a lot of musical validity to a show like this, and it gives you that freedom to kind of change it night to night without having to think of a whole band having to follow you. You can go, you know what, I'm going to do a John Hyatt song. Bam, and you're done.
Yeah, you don't have to clear with everyone.
Yeah.
Cool. You find it more. So overall, you found it more relaxing to acoustic?
Well, relaxing and also really musical.
Yeah.
It's just really because I'm not sure if you've heard Ray LaMontagne.
Yeah.
I go to his shows, and it's just so musical because it's so quiet, and the ability to express in lower volumes is just so much more. Sometimes with the feedback and the guitars and the pedals, and it's easy to get overwhelmed by the technology. It's something about just an acoustic and a mic,
Yeah. Well, I guess after you're finished here, you're going to be doing a sound check, and I guess it's going to be straightforward, easy, done.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to spend a whole lot of time on it. I always say that, and then 2 hours later, it's like,
let's try this one again.
Yeah.